Today we are here to talk to my friends at Overdye. Founded by Matt Smith and Graeme Stiles in 2024, Overdye has quickly become one of the leading places to purchase and learn more about some of the world's best artisanal labels. Overdye exists to make sure no garment goes unworn and their history is not forgotten. Let's dive in. Overdye, like you said, has been around for a year now. Honestly, I want to say you guys are killing it. I want to say how quickly you guys were able to adapt to like a serious like player, like especially in like the kind of brands that we're into, has been really like impressive to look at from afar. And there's a few items that like obviously you guys are always offering steals. Like I don't know why no one has picked up that ICT Virgil yet, or like the lumber that you guys posted. Like you guys don't usually get size 5 and things, and like when you guys do get a special piece, I'm always like, wow, like why hasn't no one picked this up yet? Like, has there been anything on like the site that you guys are just like, why? Literally, why has no one bought this at this price?
So for me, the amplest knit,
Yeah,
the hand knit natural dye in size 5.
which
I
we
mean,
get
that's
plenty of
like,
messages about the original price on and why we're selling it for a steal of a price that it currently is. That should be like a $3,000 item. We're selling it for
Yeah,
half of that, and people still think that they should get even more of a deal than that. Blows my mind.
yeah. That's one of those items that I was looking at too, because like I'm a size 5, but the knit stuff like never works well with me for some weird reason.
and
Like it
you're in
just doesn't
LA,
sit.
right?
Yeah, I'm in LA, and it's just
Yeah.
like it's too heavy. And I actually sold my Mondo vest from through you guys, that knitted one, and it just never really works for me, and I don't really like the way it sits on my particular body. But that
Mhm.
piece is like fire. Isn't like retail like 7,000 something?
Yeah.
It's
Like it's
absurd. Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. So I don't know why it's been sitting there. Hopefully after this video it sells and someone picks up a steal. But like
Matt, maybe
it's
you
just
want to talk about the deckhand that we just sold.
Yeah, that just sold. We had the deck in for maybe what was it? Almost 2 years that it
Since
sat.
I think it was before we even like made Overdye, I was helping in the background.
Yeah. And
And
that is a G-cord jacket damage process. You got the striped elbow patches with the alpaca lining. I made multiple posts on it just to show people what they were missing out of. It had every aspect of Visvim that everyone has come to love, but for some reason it sat for a while. I'm not sure that the Benny jacket and Crash, the ICT one, that was another one that sat for a while that I had no idea why. But it's just the name of the game.
yeah, and definitely those two pairs of Virgils we have. I think one of them hopefully is moving soon. We'll see
I think they're
about
working on a
that.
trade for it, yeah.
But in general, like I mean, if I ever saw those, I mean, Brian, you and I are both 11. Like if I ever saw those, I would pay easily like two or maybe even $3,000 for them, depending on the condition, because you know. Visvim in the past couple seasons, I guess we can talk about that, has sort of streamlined the materials and stuff that they use. And like, especially with ICT, they don't make anything like that anymore. And it's really such a unique boot and patinas in such a crazy way that like I can't imagine how you wouldn't want to buy one of those for less than $1,000, but here we are.
yeah, and the Virgil is so easily like resolable too. So it's
Mhm.
like you, even if the upper's in good condition, but the outsole's like torn apart, like such an easy fix. So like you could even take it to like a local cobbler and it's not that big of a deal.
Absolutely.
And you're totally right about the Visvim streamlining of materials. Like for the past, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 trunk shows that I've gone to, it's been nothing but like that damaged horse hide on pretty much like everything.
Yep.
And I've bought maybe 2 or 3 pairs of boots with that material, and now I feel like I've almost experienced the fatigue with it. I'm just like, all right, like I'm just gonna hold off on like for now. Like I'm not really gonna buy any new boots because to some point, like yeah, I'm getting a different style, but it's like it's a similar wear experience. Like at the end of the day, I don't think the community knows how you two linked up. I feel like a lot of what connected you guys might have been in like the background. And so it might be cool to talk about how, the Overdye idea started. Matt, I know you posted that photo of you like drawing out the logos like back in the day. How did Overdye start and like how did we get here with that?
Okay, so let's start back into the Vism Trading Post days. So that
Yeah.
was the origin of what soon became Overdye. So I got into Visvim back in 2016 or 2017. I got heavily into John Mayer's music. And with anyone you get, interested in, you start looking at the interests, hobbies of that person. So I liked how he liked watches. His sense of style brought me to look up, what is this guy wearing? What is this brand? Because he's a tastemaker at the end of the day. So through that, I found Visvim. I saw how expensive it was. I was a freshman in college at the time. So I, really couldn't afford anything at retail. So I would do what anyone does and scour Grailed, eBay, and try to find something used and cheap. Eventually I found a pair of Foley Folk sneakers in a white leather from spring summer 2017, I believe. And that purchase pretty much, you know, drew out the trajectory of what I wanted to do with Vism Trading Post and Overdye. I fell in love with the brand, and I was obsessed with reading dissertations and just getting any and all knowledge about the brand. Eventually, COVID came around, and like anyone does, they get bored and they come up with ideas. I sold, I think, a jumbo T-shirt on Grailed for more than I got it for. And I thought to myself, I wonder if I can repeat that cycle. Can I start flipping this stuff? So I bought a bunch of steals on Grailed one day, um, set up a camera, never done it before in my life, started filming, and I said, hey, this is pickup number one. This is what I have in my store, and called it Visma Trading Post and just started posting on Instagram, trying to advertise myself and what I wanted to do. Eventually, that turned into a huge channel and Instagram community filled with lovers of what I loved in this brand. And one of those lovers was Graham, who reached out to me, and we started becoming internet friends from there. I don't know, Graham, do you want to take it from
Yeah,
there?
I guess like abridged for me is Matt is a few years older than me, but I am an old soul when it comes to fashion, which is sort of ironic. Like I'm gonna be 22 this year. I've been interested in fashion since I was like 10 years old, probably. Like started out with Stussy and Supreme in the very early 2010s. Like I had a friend that had like a Gucci, like with a bootleg Gucci Supreme box logo and like really early box logos, like a Supreme collector before like any of that stuff had taken off in value, and was interested in skate culture. And that's like, I started there, sneakers, like all of the sort of usual trademarks of like a kid growing up. I'm from the Hudson Valley in New York, and that's like an hour and a half from New York City. So I spent a lot of time in the city going to these stores that, everyone's familiar with, Supreme, Kith, Round Two back in the day. And I was really sort of like in the center of like that sort of streetwear culture. And as I got older, a lot of things interested me. I was a really big fan of Virgil Abloh for like the duration of his career, and that sort of experience launched me like, I had stuck with fashion for such a long time that it wasn't even like a cool thing to be interested in as a kid, to where I am now, where like I see a lot of people, they find things that I was interested in a couple years ago, and like that's what they're like, they think that's cool now. And so it's like, it's sort of funny to like have such a like 180 and like what direction you feel like you're going in, because a lot of people like made fun of me and stuff as a kid for the things that now people think are really interesting. And I got into art history a lot in high school along with that fashion. And I would say that like through that, I actually got to do a program studying and living in Japan for a month in 2019, as a junior in high school. And I don't speak any Japanese, but I got to live in Tokyo for 3 weeks and then Kyoto for 1 week. And, shocking. That was like that was the tip of the iceberg. And like I remember visiting FIL the first time. I was still really interested in streetwear, so I really wanted a pair of Christos. I feel like that's the entry point, and also art history. Obviously, John Claude Christo is a very, very, very famous artist, for better and for worse. And I was really sort of interested in this brand. Like Matt, I could not afford Visvim at the time. Like $800 on a pair of Christos was mind blowing to me. Like that, it was more than like any sneaker I even owned, like the resale value of those sneakers. Absolutely bonkers to me, but I got really interested in other Japanese Americana brands that were far more accessible, like Kapital, uh, the North Face purple label. I really liked Gorpy stuff, sort of out there Americana stuff. And then I would say about sophomore year of college, I had a pair of ICT Christos by then, and I started getting more interested in Visvim's ready to wear. I was pretty fatigued of like the rest of fashion. I feel like I had been through all of it, and because of like this art history brain of mine, I became really interested in artisanal fashion and as well like the quality of like the way things are made and quality and even if something's made in Japan it's like it's good quality, but then there's obviously we know there's even crazier stuff than just made in Japan stuff. And I sort of went down that rabbit hole and I became very interested in the Highland knit from Visvim. I would say is like Matt knows that was like a whole thing for me. I sold some crazy things from my closet to pay for that first piece, and Matt helped me like authenticate it back then, along with some like other bits and bobs of like cheap social sculpture shirts and stuff like that. But that started like a blossoming friendship. And then also, I had been reselling stuff to pay for all of this for a very long time, sneakers and other streetwear stuff, fashion stuff. And I caught on to what Matt was doing. And not everyone does catch on, like did catch on to what the trading post was about, to be perfectly honest, I feel like. And Matt and I started talking about that more and more. And I would say that Matt saw that I had a lot of qualities and knew a lot of things that he didn't know, in the larger scope of fashion. And, Matt is like, he literally knows every single little thing about like Visvim to like, even the degree past what I know. Maybe that's because Matt fits more Visvim than I do, but it's shocking the amount of stuff that Matt knows. Like it's scary. And so we sort of like, we talked for like a year, I would say. I started to help slowly with the things that I was really good with, Photoshop and like Adobe Creative Suite, even editing some videos, like things to help like enhance the value production or the production value, sorry, of the trading post. And eventually we started talking about forming a new LLC that, maybe got Visvim out of the name, and we started exploring like some wider avenues and stuff. And that's how we got to Overdye.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. Like that, I guess that's one of those things where I was thinking about it too. Like when I started the channel and I have Visum in the name, right? I was always thinking like there's gonna be a cap if I stick to, doing this kind of content and like under this pseudonym and all that. But I think it's interesting that the Overdye ethos, like as soon as I saw you guys launch the brand, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like that's like one of the core like competencies of like Viswim is like the use of like natural dyes and like those kind of techniques that are sometimes like completely, I shouldn't even say sometimes, they're completely overlooked in like basically every other brand out there. And I want to say that with like the Overdye like experience on like the channel, like seeing you guys like launch and then now kind of take it to where you're at. Do you guys have any like maybe plans to expand at some point? Obviously, I know that the retail space is kind of, a dying beast and all that, but I don't know about you guys. I personally worked retail before, and there's nothing like walking inside of a store, especially with a brand like Viswim, feeling the garments and like really like getting to try things on. Is that something that you guys are like aspiring to like one day, or is that just something that's like out there? Like,
So this is something that like we started the company with this goal in mind. I think right now Matt and I could maybe struggle a lot and do something like that already, and it would be like starving artist type vibes. But um Overdye has grown so much in just a year of being Overdye already to a point that honestly shocks Matt and I. That this like that sort of thing seems feasible in a couple of years if, knock on wood, we uh we keep chugging away and working as hard as we are already. And we've talked about that, like, the idea would be hopefully something in like New York or like the larger New York area, like where I'm from, where there's, our core bases of customers are in New York and LA, and Visvim already gets a lot of love in LA, sorry. So and we're both East Coasters, so we've talked about that. We have plenty of time to sort of come up with if there's somewhere else that's better, but like we've talked about having a store. We've also talked about like just having an office space with a showroom for people who want to make appointments and come in and like check stuff out because absolutely like, I was interested in Visvim for a really long time, peripherally, and absolutely. And Matt is so lucky, like, Matt can speak about this, but he's from Florida. There's like nothing there that you're gonna get to see any Visvim. And
Yeah.
I like it's a brand that is centered so much around like the touch, the feel of things, the in-person experience of it that like it almost makes you sound like a lunatic talking about it, but like it's so true that getting to experience that stuff in person really can sometimes like make a switch in your brain flip and realize like, oh, this is why this stuff is so expensive. Like I've never felt a piece of clothing that's like this. And it's funny because on an internet podcast interview thing, like we probably sound crazy saying that, but then once like if you know, you know, and it's like
Right.
it's funny because you hear that so often in fashion, but there are a few brands that you actually do get to check out and be like this is a relic. Like, how does this exist? And then you hear like the lore around how it's made or whatever, and you're like this should probably be in a museum and not someone's like everyday blazer, but here it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that to your point, like the LA thing, that's something that people point out to me a lot because Visum Exposition is essentially like 20 minutes away. And so I'm able to try on a lot of the stuff, feel a lot of the stuff, and basically just have the staff answer most of my questions. And so for someone like me, I felt like that was one of the reasons I started the channel too. On top of wanting to kind of put more information out there, because so much of this product just kind of like if there's a certain model or a certain shirt, jacket, whatever, like that isn't as popular as as say like a kerchief or something like that that gets a lot of exposure, it just kind of falls under the radar and like then there's like it just disappears. There's like no information on it unless like Matt catches it and pays
Yep.
attention and then like jots everything down material wise. Like
Yeah.
and so I kind of wanted to do that for people. But to your point, there's been times where I go to like a trunk show or I'll go to like the store expecting to get one particular item. And then I either like fall in love with like another colorway or another fabric or a completely different garment because in person, it's just a completely different experience and like just hand feel than like trying to see something online. And so like that experience is something that like I personally like have so much experience like in, especially with like the brand. But kind of jumping off of that a little bit, like, is there anything that you guys have currently in your closets that you can't see yourself getting rid of?
You guys know I live in Florida, right? And
Yeah.
so down jackets aren't something that we can wear too often. But I do have, it's my favorite piece of my collection, and I have teetered on the fact of selling it just because I can't wear it enough. But it's a fall winter 2015 garage down jacket from the Indigo Camping Trailer collection. Not a lot of people know about it. I've done a few posts on it. But that is something that, even though I can't wear it, maybe it gets 2 years of wear, 2 wears a year, maybe. I cannot see myself getting rid of it. It uses individual panels of Kofu, Lamanta nylon that are mud dyed. You have old vintage military HBT fabrics on it. It's a wild, wild jacket, and I can't see myself getting rid of it.
talking about like the like certain fabrics and stuff like that, easily the one thing that like still keeps me coming back to Visvim is G cord. It's my favorite material to ever like exist, and I own plenty of other random things that are much more rare than it. Like I still have my Garaboo Black Elk. I have like a Shiburi Crosby from the Ginza store opening. I have a couple rare things here and there, but anything that has the G cord on it and fits me properly, like I won't sell it because no other brand uses it. I have found the supplier thanks to like a friend of the store, and it is really expensive to buy it and produce with it. Like, there's some stuff I think that Hiroki takes the liberty of overpricing, and there's other stuff that is really unique and special, and like G cord is that for me. Like it's just such a unique material, and the way that Visvim processes it is insanely unique in the way that like a lot of the stuff I own, people think it's like thrifted or something like that,
Yeah.
and like be like, oh, what jacket is that or whatever. And then I like start to explain it, and their mind really like just gets blown. Not necessarily because they think that it's worth that much money or whatever. Like I don't even share the price most of the time, but like sometimes they're like, that's insane that a company can make something look that like just used. And
Yeah.
other times they're just like, who would pay for that or whatever. But yeah, the G Chord stuff is just phenomenal, and I'm really happy that they're starting to use it again. Um, I'm especially happy with like what I've seen for fall winter 25 with G Chord, but it's obviously really expensive. So you have to like choose which releases have the right Japanese price to US price conversion and stuff like that because I'm not paying $7,000 for a G Chord jacket as much as I love it, but like yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So oddly enough, I don't own any G cords yet, and it's not by try. It's not because I haven't tried. Every time I've wanted to buy something, to your point, the price point is just like it's way
Yeah.
too much for me. And G Cord releases, I feel like typically end up not being sold at like third party retailers. So if I don't get it like directly from the brand, or if I'm not willing to like shell out the full retail price, I
Yep.
typically end up missing out on that. For me, and this seems like such a like a cliche thing because like the name of the channel is like Viswim Pioneer or whatever, but it's that blue Pioneer shirt. I think you have it too with like the Kofu, like with the Kofu
Yeah, the
patches.
skein dyed one.
Dude, I love that shirt.
Yeah,
Like
it's a great shirt.
I have pieces that cost like maybe like 5x, 6x and are way more rare than that shirt. But that was like the first one where I kind of like I bought it, I put it on, it fit perfectly, and I was like dude, this fabric's just like on another level compared to like every other shirt I have. And
Totally.
so for me, like that was kind of like, like I can't get rid of that shirt. Like I gravitate towards that shirt. Like I live in LA, so the weather, like you could wear some down jackets, but it's like it's so easy just to put that thing on. And I don't know about you guys. I'll get a little bit into my age here. So I'm definitely older than you too. I'm 30. And I work in a corporate office. So you could imagine how some of the more out there pieces from Visvim don't necessarily blend in with people that are like in suits and like, ties and all that stuff. So I
Can you
typically
wear
tend
that
to,
where you work? Can you wear
so,
these outlandish things?
so technically I can't, but I do. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
one of
yeah.
those things where like I'll wear the button up and I'll like wear some like darker denim or something like that. But I kind of get away with it. Like I work in marketing, so
Mhm.
we're looked at as like the creative people or whatever. So like, oh, just let them have their fun.
Mhm.
And so I kind of like have my whole team kind of dress casual. So I'm not the only one that's like
Mhm.
sticking out like a sore thumb. But like I can't just like show up to work in like a kerchief or something like that. You know what I mean? And so naturally, I feel like career wise, I gravitate towards the shirting because I can just get so much more wear out of it.
Mhm.
And Matt, I think the solution is to just have you move out of Florida, man. Like we got to
I
get you
think
to a
so.
state where you we got to get you to a state where you can wear it more often.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm keeping the jacket because I know that that move to LA or that move to New York is imminent, right? So I don't want to sell it and not be able to find it again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
yeah,
there are plenty of times that Matt sends me like a new watch or something. He's like, dude, this is it. He's like, what's you're gonna have to help me go through the closet. And I'm like, you're not selling the jacket. Like I'd rather loan Matt that money than watch him sell it because like, I'd pay whatever price to get one of those in like a 4 or a 5. Like you'll never, ever, ever see it again if you sell it. So not because that many people know what it is, but like as Matt said, like if someone buys it, that's a piece that you buy and you just never part ways with it. So you have to pry it out of someone's cold dead hands.
Basically, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm like that with my younger brother. So he's super into Visvim as well, but I'd say he's a lot more responsible with his purchases than I am. So typically his cash reserves for like the brand are like you'll have something to the side, like, hey, if I really want something, like, I'll be ready for it when it comes. Me, it's like even if I remotely think that I might want something in the future, I'm like, all right, I'm eyeing that, and I might have to sell something later. He's like, dude, what's the whole purpose of like getting these like rare pieces if you're just gonna like sell them and you're never gonna have them again? Like he completely understands the whole size 5 experience. Like if I sell a size 11 boot or a size 5 shirt or jacket, I'm just never gonna see it again. And so he's like, here, man, if you really want it that bad and if you really need it, like here's some money. Like don't worry about it. Just get me next time. So it's like I totally feel that. Like there's been a few pieces that I've been like tempted to sell. Some not so rare, but some guy reached out to me maybe like 4 weeks ago to buy the pound makers that I have. And this is the first item I've sold directly through like the YouTube channel, but I kind of regret it. I don't know if you guys have experienced anything like that. I know we're talking about your jacket, but is there anything you've gotten rid of so far where it's like you kind of regret like selling it?
I have to think about that one because I always say to Graham, because I am super minimal. So
Mhm.
I like maybe, four options for each thing, 4 shirts, 4 pants, whatever. So I tend to sell a lot, and for me to actually be able to sell something, I have to come to terms whether or not I'll actually wear this thing. Do I gravitate towards it? Does it get the wear it deserves? And so for the most part, everything that I've sold, I don't regret selling, but I know there are a few. I just have to think. But Graham, if you have one in mind.
Yeah, I think honestly, this is something that I can speak better to than Matt, simply out of the fact that uh in order for our friendship to blossom, I sold 10 years worth of collecting everything else pretty much to afford Visvim, which is a really crazy like lifestyle change, I would say. I held on to some really precious things. I have things from like Virgil Abloh's first and last runway shows, Dior Jordans still that I've held on to. Just things that are more sentimental to me over the years and let go of, those things that were really expensive and hard to purchase, but like I could find it again if I wanted to. Because at the end of the day, like Matt and I are young. Um, I'm relatively a college student budget, bigger budget be it, like, 10 years of buying and reselling and stuff has like afforded me a quite huge closet of stuff if I want it. But I I'm really similar to Matt and like we have really similar consumption habits, I would say. And like even this year I'm trying to only buy one thing each month, honestly. Um like I've hit a point where I've been buying and selling stuff for such a long time that like I really know what I'll wear and I really know what won't be worn. Um and also like, I have two tests. I have like the test where Matt, he knows like everything that's in my closet and he'll tell me if he thinks something's redundant. And then I also have the girlfriend test who is like, you know, I show her something, she doesn't care about what brand it is or whatever. She'll just be like, that's the ugliest shirt I've ever seen. Or like, she knows what looks good on me and like, brand aside or all of that. And I think those are two very valuable buffers to have. And as a result of that, there's been a lot of stuff like, I've never sold something honestly and regretted it in terms of Visvim. And I've sold a lot of things already, like I sold that Highland knit that got me into it to Julian Fetterman, who sold his and regretted it and
Mhm.
bought mine. But I got scammed honestly on Grailed with that because there were huge amounts of like moth holes and stuff like that. And Julian's mom actually crochets and repaired it for him. And so I'm really glad that I could like pass it on and it could be restored because I think it's probably like one of the most unique things Visvim has ever made. And he's probably like one of the, you know, he's probably one of the collectors that really kicked this thing off for like most people in the United States outside of like celebrity cult figures or whatever. He's a legend of the game, as cringy as that is to say. Um, but then like, other things, I got a pink iris liner like John Mayer, the one size 5 from a Russian oligarch who was fleeing the US. I got it off of him for $800, I think, brand new, a couple of years ago. And I ended up selling that to another great customer of ours for a hefty profit. But like, that's something you sell it, you'll never see it again in that condition. And like I really don't regret selling a lot of these things. Like even I sold Iris, like I don't own an Irish jacket anymore. And that's like an essential in Visvim. I don't think Matt does either, honestly. But we've both come to the conclusion like neither of us are that crazy about like mud dyed nylon because it's such a headache to wear every day because if you stain it or something, it's impossible to like clean it properly. And it's so funny because we see so many Reddit posts of people that get in that predicament and realize how screwed they are because they clean it and the mud effect actually makes the spot cleaning like do the opposite thing and the damage is even worse. And so like I mean that's just like a perfect example that like Matt and I have been around the block so much with this stuff that we like just know when it's time to like send something down the road. And so because of that, like, there's few things that we regret. And when we regret it, like usually we just will DM the person until they want to sell it back to us. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that because one of my favorite jackets, I have that Gavin jacket. It's mud dyed nylon. Dude, I have this gnarly stain on the chest, and I fucked up because I didn't read anything about the material, and I started like spot cleaning it. Dude, that stain is like
Yep.
this big, and like thankfully there's like a little flap that I can kind of like cover the stain with. But dude, that
Yeah.
thing is never going away. And that jacket, like every time I look at like the bottom of it, I'm just like, fuck, I
It'll just
fucked up.
remind you of it.
Yeah,
Yeah. I've uh
exactly.
I've tended to stay towards machine washable items now. I can't deal with going to the dry cleaners, being scared if they'll mess it up, you know. So that's sort of the one thing that I look for in adding something to my wardrobe. Can I machine wash it? Because otherwise, I don't like to fuss with anything and be too careful when I'm out, wearing something. So that's something I do specifically for my wardrobe and my taste.
Yeah, I think this is a really good thing to mention and like transition to talking about like, Brian, you buy a lot more like modern Visvim than either of us do.
Yeah.
Especially stuff at retail. Matt has never bought something from Visvim before at
Well,
retail.
I got to be there when you buy your first one, dude.
Um, but like, recently I just sold my Strabbler down jacket um to someone and I also made a good amount of money on that sale. Um, I've taken Matt and I take a lot of losses, but we also like we're Grailed Goblins, we're chronically online. So there's plenty of things that like, to be clear, like our personal items we get to profit on, and that's how we get to collect stuff. And then the Overdye profit is separate from that. Like we don't mix church and state. Like those two things are
Right.
very separate. But I sold that and that took a lot of deliberation because like it is really hard to find those jackets. And you know, if you follow me on Instagram, like my style isn't really that dark like Strabbler aesthetic. It's just pretty basic Americana, I would say. Like I wear colors that I think look good on me, and I wear like pretty typical, like I would say like whatever like Ralph wore back in the day or whatever, except the Visvim version of it. Like, I'm not reinventing the wheel with my style. I just like to wear stuff that makes me feel confident. And I thought the Strabbler was sick. A lot of people thought it was really cool. Girlfriend has always hated it. Um, but it was like one of those things that I was really excited when I got it. And even though I felt cool in it, it never matched my style. So I ended up selling it. And like, I don't even regret selling it now, which is so funny because the one thing in my experience is that like, there are so many things that you think you can't live without until you sell it, and then you realize these are just things, they're just objects, this is just consumption. Like I don't need this to to survive. I really don't care about that jacket anymore. It's great if someone else really likes it, but I got to get a more contemporary recent piece of Visvim with that money instead, which was that swapped for me for the 101 XX cords with the vintage beacon blanket in it, which speaks way more to my style and art history as well. Like having a vintage blanket that's in that amazing condition inside the jacket is like a really cool thing. And I think the jacket is overpriced, even though they're super limited and one-offs. Beacon blankets aren't that expensive, which I think I even mentioned in the reel we did. And that gave me the option to selling that gave me the option to afford something that I think fits my style more. And I've worn it a lot since I got it. I really like it. But yeah, it's interesting when it comes to Matt and I wanting like a new piece of Visvim because we traditionally don't pay retail prices. If we lived near a
Yeah,
store, maybe we would, but that's always been like an interest it's been interesting to be in that corner of Visvim because and larger Japanese Americana because both of us consume in such a different way, I think, compared to most people.
yeah.
Yeah, like
No,
I've never been to a Visvim store before, which is wild to say for our size as a pretty global retailer for secondhand Visvim. The fact that I've never stepped foot into a Visvim store might be surprising for people.
for sure. So I'm of the opposite experience, like Graham, as you might have mentioned, and Matt. I think we've talked about it before too, a little bit. But I didn't start getting into Viswim, not heavily, anyways, not into the ready wear until maybe like 2019, 2020. So some would say the perfect time for my body size. So prior to those years, literally nothing from Viswim would fit me. Like my chest is way too wide. I'm too heavy, too tall of a
They didn't do
person.
drop shoulders. That's why.
Exactly. So once they started doing the drop shoulder stuff, I was able to start buying some of the ready wear.
Mhm.
So my start was, and not to dwell on that too much, but it was the typical we're going the footwear route, we're going Christos, we're
Mhm.
going Virgils, we're going FBTs, because I kind of came from that streetwear scene too. But I got married, I had kids, and so it's kind of I can't be wearing Nikes. I mean, not that other people can't, but just for me, I didn't want to be in a Diamond Supply Co. T-shirt and some
Mhm.
Nike SBs in my mid 20s, going on to be 30. So I've always known about Viswim, but very, very early on, I bought, it might have been an A-line t-shirt. I can't remember which fit it was.
Mhm.
It was a baby t-shirt. I'm like,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the A-line. That's it.
I'm not buying any clothing from Viswim. I'll just get to it when I get to
Mhm.
it. But one day when I went to the exposition store, because I worked at that point, I worked maybe 5 to 10 minutes away from it. I was told about some of the newer jumbo cuts and things like that. And the reason why I personally go to the retail store beyond just the size 5 situation, it's also because, as I'm sure you guys know, when it comes to the watch game, at some point you kind of develop a relationship with the store, and you kind of end up on a VIP list. And by no mean do I spend the amount that people might think that I do. Like, to your point, Graham, while I try to, I try to avoid taking too many losses, but obviously paying retail, I'm already at a 40-50% loss. And that's just something I have to deal with. But I try to buy maybe 1 to 2 pieces max a month. And a lot of what I budget for is typically done through the trunk shows. Like if it's an FIL exclusive release or something like that, I'll get it at the trunk show because I know they're probably not going to order too many for the store. But if it's a mainline release, typically I'll just wait for it to hit an Essence or something like that. And so the experience with paying full retail price, it's kind of weird because yes, I'm experiencing the brand firsthand, and you get invited to special events like the trunk shows. Speaking of regrets, there's one regret I do have. And it wasn't a purchase. When I went to the Carmel store opening, because I got the invite, I want to say in October of I want to say October of 23, but the actual event didn't happen until late November, early December. um, I met Hiroki, I met Kelsey, and it just didn't feel like the vibe. So I regret not asking for a photo. Like it was one of those things where I was kind of like, I wanted to be respectful of like their space and like all that stuff. But I was like, damn, dude, I kind of wish I like locked that memory in. Like I bought the boots, like I bought the Grizzlies, Graham. I think you have them too. But that was one of those regrets I had with the brand. But with saying that, it's like, paying retail price is kind of like you get to experience modern Visvim, which so many people have an issue with, especially because of like the heavy branding. But it's like so many people ask me about like fakes and stuff like that, and like about my size 5 situation. And so, like, for me personally, like, I recommend to people to try to get a deal whenever you can, especially on like the older stuff. I feel like some of the older releases from Viswim definitely were a lot more creative when it came to material fit and things like that. But I straight up, like, as much as I'd want that pink Irish jacket, it's never going to fit me. Like, I'd have to
Even
lose a
in
hundred
five,
pounds.
yeah.
Yeah, like I'd have to lose 100 pounds and then it fit like my left arm. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
it's just not
Yeah,
gonna go
yeah.
on. So I'm gonna stick to like the newer stuff. But to your point, and again, I just want to know how you guys feel. How do you guys feel about like the modern direction with like all the branding and some might call like excessiveness?
So I personally do not cater towards the new heavy branding on Vism items. I like the old stuff. Again, like you said, it was a lot more creative with fabrics, fit. It seemed like they were having fun making the clothes and being very playful, which now it's more of a streamlined approach to making classic pieces that, don't get me wrong, they're great. But I think Visvim has kind of lost their, again, sense of playfulness in the new stuff. Um, I want to say I like the modern shirting without logos. So like the Damage Process 1910 shirt comes to mind. But on the modern logo heavy stuff, it's not my thing.
I think my sentiments are similar to Matt right now. I've purchased a couple things in the past 2 years at retail. For me, my consumption habits, like I am really happy to buy ICT at retail as well as contrary depth because the sub labels, I hate that people say that they're diffusion labels because that's not true. They have just as much quality as mainline, if not better in a lot of cases with ICT. The smaller release stuff I think has a lot better attention to detail in terms of its like production quality and stuff like that. And people can disagree with that, but like yeah, diffusion, like this is not Rick Owens' Dark Shadow versus Rick Owens' mainline. Like they're of equal status in my opinion. But I buy those sub labels because the, however they come up with the US retails is there's less of an upcharge. Usually it's like 100 to 200 bucks extra from the Japanese retail, whereas with mainline, you're looking at, you're buying a new car and driving it off the lot with mainline, and you're gonna lose like half of what you pay, which personally, like I just can't be doing that unless it's a boot or something like that that is a lifetime piece. There's plenty of things you say you buy for life and you actually don't keep it. And so like even recently I bought the Alcan dry denim jacket, which we have for sale right now on the store. It was like one of the highlight pieces of this drop. And currently that's like the store owns that and that's through the store. But I bought that and regretted it because A, I was told I should size up and I went true to size on it and they fit quite trim compared to regular swing tops. So I ended up not wearing it a lot because of that. It also bled, which is really odd for dry denim. Dry denim's not supposed to bleed, which confused me and it ruined a t-shirt of mine because of that. And then C, the chain stitching on the back is beautiful. It reminds me of like a vintage FFA jacket. But it just wasn't for me in terms of like I really liked the front of the jacket because of the ICT chain stitch that or actually it's a hand stitch, I think, that reminded me a lot of my Goodyear swing top that I own. And that is probably the item that I own with the most branding on it, besides my like Visvim Santa Fe long sleeve tee. And I'm not huge on that Santa Fe long sleeve tee. I just got it like because Well, actually, my mom got it for me when they went to Santa Fe because she wanted to get me like, a little souvenir. And obviously she knows how much I like Visvim. But like I think they've really done a great thing with the drop shoulders. I'm similar to you, Brian. I'm built like a brick shit house. Like I need drop shoulders. A 5 in the old liner cut fits me perfectly, but it fits like a glove. In terms of IT jackets, I fit a 2020 IT in a size 4 like a glove. Fits perfectly on me, but like any other IT, I've sold other ITs because they don't fit me right. Um, a lot of old Viz that Matt and I talk about between the two of us, it's quite funny because we are blessed to own the store, and most of the stuff, everything that we buy has a margin that we can flip it if we don't want to keep it. The margin that we have a set rate for the store of what we buy and sell at, and I would say 90% of things we buy have that margin that we can just sell it because a lot of old Visvim there's like no set sizing with it or whatever. Like we could get like Matt could get a random Kilgore that's a size 3, which is normally tiny, and somehow he fits perfectly into it and it fits perfect. And that's just the case with old Visvim. And that's why like Matt does have a lot of old Visvim is because he's gotten to try it all on. And that's a really unique privilege in this day and age. Like most people have headaches with Grailed and like trying to figure out sizing and stuff like that. And Matt gets to have a store in his house where he gets to do all of that. And I've bought personally, like I would love to buy more stuff from trunk shows and stuff like that, but it's a weird situation owning Overdye and doing that. Not because like Visvim isn't cool with us, but more so because, if I can get it for cheaper, as is like, given my age and stuff, why wouldn't I? And I still set aside money to buy things at retail, like my ICT Grizzly boots, which are some of my favorite things I own, or I got the Black Friday Purser jacket this year, G cords. I love it. And those things I'm happy to buy because the retail is pretty one-to-one with Japan, and usually resale sits just below that. So it really is like, Matt and I try and act like money doesn't exist sometimes with this stuff, but a lot of the time, like we just like our sensibilities won't allow that to happen. Um, and it makes even less sense without being able to go to the store. Like Matt always says, if I got to go to the store, like I would buy it. But like when it's on that awfully designed web store, it just does not make you want to purchase it. That you
Too
can't
risky.
return stuff either to, which
Yeah,
is,
you can't
and
return
I
stuff.
And their
know,
measurements are always wrong
yeah,
too.
I know people plenty. Actually, I got a size 3 purser and I was super lucky that I found someone right away that got the size 4 from Exposition and size swapped with me, overnighted it to me. I overnighted the 3 to them, and it worked perfectly because the only clients I know that can return stuff are like VIP clients that are like, I'm never going to give you a sale again unless you take this back. And you know, Visvim can act like they're their own sort of thing in terms of customer experience, but when you have a VIC tell you that they're going to do that with their money, like a lot of the times the financial thing to do is to just switch your rules a little bit for the person that's spending 6 figures a year on your stuff. And yeah, I think I don't understand why they wouldn't allow exchanges at least because I just think that's so messed up for growing the brand, but also, like, if we look at Visvim's like growth pattern, they're clearly a lot more focused on expanding in Japan, and the West Coast expansion is more of like an afterthought and a convenience for Hiroki, and clearly you know, clearly he lives maybe half the time in America. I don't obviously know him personally, but like you know, no store in Santa Fe is printing money. It is there for another set of parameters and reasons that it aligns with the brand and stuff like that and random rich people that live there. Whereas like these stores in Japan that have crazy Chinese proxies queuing up with like 30 grandmas and grandpas that they've hired from around the area to buy stuff and ship it all back to China. There's a lot more of a streetwear money-making scheme there than there is in the United States. And I'm guessing maybe you can speak about this, Brian, that a lot of these like US exclusive releases have brought some proxies to the West Coast stores to ship back to China because like at the end of the day, nobody's like nobody is walking into these like West Coast stores as like a potential customer and buying stuff in a traditional retail sense. Like it's just too expensive for that.
Right. Yeah. So I've talked with the staff. I'm not going to get like ultra specific, but I'll tell you this. So the pieces that are like North America exclusive or that only release through like Visvim Exposition, there are certain people from that side of the world that come in, they bring a large group of people and they essentially buy everything up at retail and at prices that most people are just, like you said, straight up not going to pay. And that's happened, especially with a lot more of the hype releases. The things that they know will like, go for a pretty penny over there in Asia. And to your point, it's clear that a lot of the people that do shop at the store, like they typically place their orders ahead of time, or the staff hits them up like, "Hey, are you interested in this one?" And then sometimes I'll get the little nudge, by the way, where it's like, "Hey, like I know you weren't considering getting this like purser, but just so you know, like X amount of people are like lining up for it." But then sometimes it is a genuine like, "Hey, like if you want this, I literally only have one size five, so if you're interested, like you got first dibs." And so that proxy thing, man, like it's definitely noticeable a lot more. And I guess we're kind of running low on time here, but I just want to tell you guys one more thing, just because it's something that I thought of like as soon as you said, driving off the lot and depreciating. I have a running joke with Janique at Viswim where every single time I go to like a show or like an IT piece releases, I always say to myself, like, you know what? Like, I want that jacket, but I don't know. I could go get like a 2020 Honda Civic for that price. Like, literally, like I could literally go buy a used car or maybe even a new car, depending on like what you're getting for that amount of money. And it's just like, I can't fathom dropping 12, $15,000 for a leather jacket. Like, I felt them, like the quality's great. Like I've tried some on, the fit's great, but it's just like every time I see her, like now we have that running joke, like, "Oh, how much is that piece?" Like, "Oh, it's like about an '06 Civic." Okay, that's fine. Like, how much is that one? Like, that's a down payment for like a pretty nice like luxury car nowadays. So, like, I think that the staff and the brand, I think they're aware of the price point on some of these pieces, and at that point, Graham, you kind of already said this. I think at a certain point, it's up to the consumer to say, like, "Hey, I'm a really big fan. Obviously, I want to enjoy these pieces, but I have my limitations, like too." And so, for me, that's been the Vism experience. Obviously, like talking to you guys and like kind of like meeting new people online is great and all that. And I don't know, like for me personally, it's been an interesting like few years because I've met so many people through the brand, and like I met the owner and all that stuff, and that's pretty cool. But like to your guys' point, like at the end of the day, it's just clothes. Like you know what I mean? Like it's not that precious. Like
I
and
feel like
also
I feel go ahead.
no, and I was gonna say like the side note, dude, my wife fucking hates Viswim. Like she fucking hates Viswim. She's like, "Dude, that shit is like trash. Like, why are you wearing that? Like, you look like we don't look like we're a couple. Like, you're wearing some like some weird shit." Like, she's cool with like the shirting and like the regular stuff, but then like obviously I have to be transparent about the finances and stuff.
Mhm.
So she's like, "How much did you pay for that jacket?" I'm like, "Oh, X amount." She's like, "Are you fucking stupid? Like, why would you do that?" And she like literally shits on it. But then there's days where she'll go into my closet and it'll fucking fit her like a blanket. But she'll go into my closet and she'll pull out like an amply short body or something like that, and she'll just casually wear it. Like she's like, "Oh, this I kind of get." But then like the more like artisanal stuff, she's just like, "Yeah, dude, like you gotta pump the brakes on that."
Yeah.
And yeah, like you were saying with the Honda Civic joke on some of those pieces, I think that's part of the reason why we wanted to create Overdye is to kind of bring this brand that's known for these insane high retail prices and give people the chance to experience it at that lower price point. I wanted to be a company that I wanted when I got into Visvim, right? I wanted a one-stop shop to find Visvim for 60% off of that retail price, but it just wasn't a thing back then. So me and Graham made this company to kind of give people that option because it's 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 hard to stomach some of the retail prices at this
Yeah.
point.
And I think adding on to that, like, there is this huge emphasis on like democratizing the fashion that we are selling because there are plenty of stores out there. Like the first one that comes to mind for me is Luke's. Luke, he's a really nice guy. He has a location in LA now. He was one of the round two owners before location in New York City, and he like, flips all this sort of hype stuff, Balenciaga, Miu Miu, Rick Owens, traditional stuff, in the sort of fashion zeitgeist. And we sell these really niche random brands that sometimes someone is like, would you guys consider consigning this? And we add a new brand to like our Rolodex or whatever. And it's like a way to share these brands that are overlooked that like, we both realize there's a clientele for this that isn't being covered. And, now I would say we've successfully established ourselves on social media and SEO and like all of that sort of stuff as being the place to go to get it. And we've seen that growth in the past year. With a lot of people like us that are like, we want to get into this. We have the money to buy stuff at retail, but like we'd rather buy it at this price and get to see if we really like it, et cetera, et cetera. Because like that whole ethos with buying IT and stuff like that, incredible products. But there are people out there that have that much money, spend that much money, and it's disposable income to them in a way that it is like potentially debt for another person or something like that. And we want to provide a middle ground where someone can get what was a $10,000 jacket for $2,000 or something like that and make it a little more bite-sized. And I think that hopefully as we grow, we can keep doing that. Because like we were careful in choosing our name because we love Visvim. It's the backbone of our company, but we also want to like be able to expand and show people other brands like Kapital is one, for example, that is equally artisanal and even more handcrafted than Visvim just because it's so small scale. And like it's cool to be able to be on like the forefront of showing people these brands. And something that Matt and I are huge on that I think is like important to cover. And Brian, you're really unique for this sort of like this place that you exist in like Visvim content because something that I've noticed is um uh there's a certain kind of clientele with each store for Visvim in the US, and LA is easily like the most hype gatekeepy community in terms of like buying Visvim, and the further away from LA you get, the more you get to like mountain men with just a ton of disposable income to buy Visvim who aren't trying to gatekeep. They'll just talk to you about whatever. Maybe Visvim is a drop in the bucket for them, but they'll be happy to share it. On the East Coast here, like we have nobody who like sells Visvim for the most part. So everyone's happy to share it if like and talk about it. But like, you're from LA, you have no problem answering people's questions about releases, fit, et cetera, et cetera. And like, you came to the game after Matt and I, and when we were interested in this stuff, like there were plenty of people that would not share everything with us about um the brand and like, oh, how did this fit or whatever. Sometimes people telling us the wrong fits and stuff like that. Like a competition, which is crazy for something
Yeah.
that's just clothes. It's just buying stuff, and it's like Matt and I want to make a space with Overdye that everyone feels like they can be included and like have a place to like share this hobby and passion, whether you want to be a consigner with us or whether you want to be someone that just gets to buy from us and, talk to us about things. It's just important for that to like exist, I think, in this space because when stuff is so expensive, it can get really competitive for no good reason. And like Matt and I are just we're competitive in wanting Overdye to be the best, but that's it. Like we want everyone to feel like they have a place to go to and like talk to us about things. And sometimes that means that we get crazy DMs and stuff, but like I don't think either of us would change it for anything because it's a hell of a lot better than what we were dealing with like a couple of years ago. So
Being that you're both in like the YouTube space, I'm sure you guys have gotten some like pretty cringe comments. I'll tell you guys about this one guy actually reached out to me both on YouTube and on Instagram telling me like what to record. He was like, "Hey, why don't you like do a day in the life? Go get a matcha." Like straight up told me go get a matcha and like, go to Visvim exposition, start shopping around. I think that'd be a really cool concept. And he left that in a comment of a video, and he also left that like he DM'd me that. And I just thought it was just like it was this weird experience because like Graham, to like kind of like what you were saying offline, it's weird that we're kind of putting ourselves out there on the internet, and then people are kind of like developing these like relationships and like almost like interests like in what it is we're doing outside of like YouTube. And that's been one of those things that I've personally had to adjust to. But I don't know if you guys have had any experiences with like people that have followed your channels.
I
Matt, if you
can't.
want to talk first, you can go off about all the DMs and stuff we get.
Yeah, yeah. I found that since I started my channel, a lot of people, you do it with celebrities, right? If you, people like John Mayer, who we're all fans of, you kind of hyperfixate on his life and what he's doing, and he almost becomes a friend without becoming a friend, right? So if you met him, you would almost expect him to know things that you know about him, about yourself. And I found that with YouTube as well, where people would DM me acting as if they were best friends with me, even though I'd never talked to them before. Uh, this can come in two separate ways of people being extra friendly, or like you said, Brian, someone who thinks they can sort of steer you in a certain direction for your vision for your YouTube channel when it's not really warranted in a way. Um, but yeah, like in a general aspect, people tend to create relationships without you on the other side, is what I've noticed.
Yeah, I can add on to that and say that like definitely happens on YouTube that you just like I was saying before, you get some really odd comments. Like I've had plenty of comments about like my body and the way that I fit in clothes and like how I might not understand my body's fit in clothes as well as other people do, which is like just a whole weird topic that like I think comments are great on YouTube. I personally don't comment on like anything. So when someone does leave a comment, it means a lot to me because I think that, that I made enough of an impact on like whatever content I produce that someone felt like the want to leave a comment. But then when that comment is like in poor taste, I'm like, that's something I would never do. So it really sort of boggles my mind. Never offends me particularly because it's like, it could be a robot for all I know. But it is like I think Matt and I have learned a lot in Overdye too, where now we aren't making as much long form content, but we get like tens of DMs at least every single day, a lot of new people asking very random things and grailed messages as well. Um, People just like uh we have a lot of patience, I would say. That's like a huge thing in retail is like customer service and really just always giving people the benefit of the doubt. But there are like plenty of times, as Matt said, that like someone thinks they know us and they'll like try and take advantage of that to like try and get like discounts on things or like haggle us in not polite ways and stuff like that. That is like it's sort of crazy because it's like, this is neither Matt nor I's full-time job. And like for people to take advantage of that um that free time that we're offering, like it's our money basically. Like time is money and we take a lot of time to do Overdye. And like for someone to just be like, oh, let me just say some foul thing on why this is should be a discount. For example, people send us links all the times of listings that we get steals or something like that, and we're flipping it. And because they think that we're their friends because we make YouTube videos or something like that, they will often be like, why are you selling it for this much of a markup? As if it isn't a business that Matt and I want to like have as our full-time job someday. And that's sort of like a crazy thing to say to someone who is going through like a ton of effort to run a fully fledged business, like, you know, that we're trying to grow into a full-time job, that people think that because they found like the listing that we're flipping or something like that, that they should be entitled to pay what we paid. And it's like, this is fashion. It's like the name of the game. And, you know, it happens with sneakers, it happens with clothes, and like we're happy to talk about it, but it's like if you wanted to get the listing for that price, you should have beat us. And, you know, part of me feels guilty saying that, but it's also weird because it's like we're a business. What are we supposed to say or do? I don't know.
No, I feel that because, obviously, like I don't sell that often, but I don't want to take too much of a hit on some of the pieces that I have. But with the channel, there's been certain people that reach out because, as you guys know, I'm a size five. So the size five in Visvim is like super hard to like come across on a lot of these different items, which I can go off tangent and talk about, why I buy directly from Visvim specifically so that I can get all the size five stuff that I want. But for example, there'll be like items that I have that people will reach out to me for that, like, they'll go out of their way to say, like, hey, I noticed like you have the size five in that lumber like ND shirt. Like, will you sell it to me for $1,000? Like, I saw you wore it in your video like a couple times, like things like that. So then to me, it's like, well, one, you're reaching out to like buy the item off of me. Like, if you know what the item is, I'm sure you know like what it costs me and things like that. And so I think it's crazy that they'll come out like just out of left wing and like lowball me for something that I didn't even offer to like put on sale. And that's coming from someone like on an individual level, right? Not on a business level. So I could only imagine the kind of things that you guys get from like that
Yeah,
perspective.
totally. I think um in my particular experience, there are Visvim things like Matt and I have both wanted forever. And if we find the listing and it's like a YouTuber or something or like some random internet person, usually we'll message them and be like, we'll pay whatever price you want for this because of that exact issue that like if it's a personal item or something like that, yeah, it's sort of like how are you gonna like your first impression of meeting someone is gonna be, let me offer you like below what you paid or something like that.
Yeah,
Obviously stuff depreciates, but like
right.
an insulting offer. It's like it's yeah. I mean, I don't wanna make the call too negative talking about bad customer experience things, but it is funny like now having the business as Overdye for like about a year. Um like there's just like a lot of customer service things that it shows like how many people have not worked retail and stuff like that because like I would never treat a service worker like that. Not saying that we're like customer service workers or something, but it's just like yeah, there's some messages and stuff that we get and we're like we'll screenshot it and send it to each other and be like are you reading the same message?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess in closing, guys, like the growth of Overdye has been, tremendous to watch. And you two are obviously like, I, you guys hit it on the nail. Like, I hate gatekeeping, and I love giving people credit when they've inspired me. So, like, you two have been like two big pillars and like why I started the channel. And honestly, like, to everyone's point, like whoever watches this, like I get my information from some of the Overdye posts too. I'm like, what material was on that shoe again? And I'll try to find like the old like archive post in like your timeline. And so I think that the wealth of knowledge that Overdye provides in like the space where, you're able to acquire these pieces that you wouldn't be able to experience elsewhere has been really cool to watch. And dude, I can't wait to see what you guys have coming in the future.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah,
Thank
we
you very
appreciate the
much.
support. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, and thank you guys for constantly supporting too. But with that, I think this wraps it up, huh?
Yep, I think so, man. I appreciate it.